You hang on to negative emotions. These could and actually probably are the reason behind the chronic pain or health issues you're experiencing. I'm Jane Hogan, the wellness engineer, and your host of Wellness by Design. And my guest today is Dan Smith, former engineer like me. So Dan's background was as a businessman. He had great success early on, and it actually led him to burnout, disillusionment, as he realized that he didn't feel fulfilled and he had health issues. And even though he had all this money, it really didn't help. And it led him to explore the deeper meanings and come up with this integral methodology that he uses now, which combines emotions and energetic release to help him and also his clients. Him and his wife work together now, help them have the all-round success, the financial and health and business and personal success that they need to have, that we all desire to have, by removing energetic blockages. So in this episode, we have some great conversations about how we hang on to emotions, how to identify where we're hanging on to emotions, how we can release them, and also we do a great practice at the end. Dan leads us through that, so make sure you don't miss that, because it's going to be super helpful to get you to release emotions from your body. All right, enjoy the episode. Dan, I'm so happy to welcome you to the Wellness by Design podcast. You and I have had some great conversations about how we're both engineers and how we've switched to a whole new area now. I'd love to talk about your background and what took you from being an engineer to doing the work that you're doing now. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Dan
Yeah,
Smith?
thank you. And thank you so much, Jane, for having me on here. It's really wonderful to be able to share the gifts that we've received and to be with other like-minded people that are going, wow, there's a different way to look at things. That's precisely, I think, what led to a lot of my personal evolution and or just complete wholesale change, however you would like to look at that. The point is that when I looked at it, I grew up in the buckle of the Bible Belt in East Texas, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was emotionally disconnected. Had some things that had happened to me as a child that I didn't understand, didn't even know about, and those had created for me just to be an intellect and a mind. And I was a really, really good one. I was very good at that, and I was a good Baptist kid. So did a lot of the things right and met my wife in high school. Well, she wasn't my wife in high school, but we met in high school and ended up getting married and led to what everybody would consider a very successful life. Um, you know, 30 year at about 30, was able to retire and start investing money and doing different things. There's a very long story narrowed down, but I realized in my 30s that I couldn't feel and therefore I couldn't necessarily trust like most people could. And then I made a bunch of really poor business decisions.
Mm.
And so from the outside, we looked really good, but I'd made a bunch of really difficult decisions. We'd lost a lot of money. We made a lot of money too, but so people would still look at us and say that we were successful, but I could figure there was something wrong. I'm like, why can't I trust? And why does Shannon, my wife, always know that these bad things are going to happen before I do? And she's like, you sure you can trust those people? I'm like, no, I got it figured out because I was so smart. And then so that led to a lot of questioning. And then also, relationship issues with my wife, because imagine what it would be like to be married to a person who couldn't feel, doesn't have
Hmm.
emotion. He's just an intellect. Kind of really wasn't the best thing. And so we had our own dynamics. That led to kind of a massive amount of pain and a crisis point that kind of thrust me into personal development. I really approached that personal development more about my mind and how can I be a better leader. I was a public company CEO for private equity companies and doing a lot of really neat things, but was not happy and didn't realize why that was. And especially to have been successful on the outside in all the different ways, even as a good Baptist kid, like I did all the things I was supposed to do. Why was everything so hard? And why was I encountering and having massive physical pain in my neck? Different things that had happened. I could go into more detail, but that led me into a place of really questioning and seeking to try to find something different and new. And I found that in personal development, Tony Robbins, and joined his highest level group and went all around, traveled around. Just that became literally my life for a couple of years back then because I was seeking, trying to find something new, and ended up finding some very, very special energy workers and guides in that space, which I would have never been open to because honestly, I thought that was like evil, bad stuff in my
Right.
background where I grew up from. I didn't have any context for it. And very, very long story short, basically, I came through and had a massive healing in the energy space, which was around the expression and release and catharsis of a lot of blocked energy and emotion that was locked in my chest that I didn't even know was there. And as a result, the thing that I couldn't have, which was feelings, turns out I have an extraordinary gift for. And I can actually feel other people's emotions and true empath and all kinds of things I would have never been able to describe as an engineer, which you and I really connected on the first time we met. Like, wow,
Mhm.
another engineer that can feel energy and emotion, all those things. It's fascinating. But that led to a lot of physical healings within me with, pain and structure and posture and all kinds of different things. I used to have to go see chiropractors all the time. One specific one, I would say, because most of them I didn't find that it helped me. He was more of an energy-based chiropractor, even though I wouldn't have understood it. Um, but since that work, I haven't had to go back. And so it's become a daily practice. It's become the way in which we live, being able to listen to our bodies and being able to, honor what they are saying. Whereas in the past, my body was nothing but legs to move my brain around to the next deal. And that really was how I was. And so, turns out, and trying to make a very long story even shorter, know, these gifts that I received and my mind, my brain as an engineer, I've been able to meld those things together and come up with, some processes around how we can actually do energy work for ourselves because our mentors it was more chiropractic, like a chiropractic form that where you're adjusting the energetic fields around the body and then the body shifts. It's not necessarily like push pop.
Yeah.
And so somehow we've just received a special gift around that, and that's kind of what I'm doing is helping to share that. But that all came from massive amounts of pain in relationship and in business and physical body. And so that's a very long answer, but that in a nutshell is what's happened over the last 12 years
Mm.
of completely, creating in me a new person.
You know, it seems like this is the way of life, right? We have pain. It could be physical pain, it could be financial pain, relationship pain, other kinds of pain. But it's that pain that leads us to seeing and living life in a different way, or we don't, right? But the
Correct.
ones that do, it starts with that catalyst of pain. It's like we have to have that rock bottom kind of experience in order to go, okay, I give up. What I was doing wasn't working.
Right.
There's something else. And so you talked about, Dan, not being able to like feel in your body.
Mhm.
And I was the same way. But most people who don't feel in their body don't realize they don't feel in their in
I
their
didn't
body,
either. I had no idea.
right? So how would if someone's listening to us now and or watching us now and they're like, I don't even know what they mean. I don't feel my body. Like, what would you say are some of the signs, or how would you know that you're not feeling in your body?
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question, and it gets to the core of a lot of what we do. It's like, I was really frustrated because I thought when I look at from my life, I'm like, everybody outside of my life wants my life. And, I retired at 30, started having kids, have 4 kids, 4 wonderful kids, got to travel, got to do all the things I wanted to do. I got to work when I wanted to work, if I wanted to work, and traveled and spent a lot of time at Disney with the kids and wherever we wanted to go.
Hmm.
But as my wife says, we look great on a Christmas card, but if you're like in the home, it's like, and then what I realized in hindsight is that that's kind of human condition. Like
Hmm.
even no matter how good we have it, and I've worked with billionaires, like high-end companies, the exclusive work that I do. If you were to go look at me and my public persona prior to really embodying this work that we are, I'm very professional, button down kind of person in the public scheme of things, and that's what it looked like from the outside. But it was that pain and the things that I felt, the longings, the things that I didn't really have, that really kind of began to key me into something's missing, something's off. And I think that dissatisfaction, which you have to be careful because that's part of a human thing, and it's the opposite of contentment and gratitude. There's a lot of things that weave into it, but for me to answer your question, it's like looking at the effects around what it is you're focusing on. Because most times people are like, I've got my plan, my program, the things that I'm trying to create, the stuff that I want to do. The really successful business owners that I've worked with, that's a lot of times where they're focusing.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why they're so successful. They have an extraordinary drive and an extraordinary ambitions and desires, and they're able to create those things. But unless they're doing some form of energetic or spiritual work, there's something missing. Because a
That
lot of times they're
emptiness.
being driven by something they don't realize. And that's the work that I specialize is how do we find out that we have these energetic blocks or emotional blocks or sometimes, in the Untethered Soul, Michael Singer calls them samskaras. We talk about those a lot because there's a
Hmm.
lot of interesting data around that. But the point is, these are the things that are making our choices for us. They're creating our personality, they're creating our identity. And if that's my identity is that I work really hard and that, then I'm going to feel successful if I'm doing that. And when that begins to break down, and I use this a lot in my high-end business consulting work, my winning strategy is always having the answers, or it's always working hard. It's whatever those is. It's when you get to a certain age and that begins to not work, begins to break down, you're like, in the past, I've always gone to that thing and it's given me what I want. Why in this particular case am I doing those things, but I'm not feeling satisfied or I'm not feeling happy? Or why is my back killing me?
Hmm.
Why do I have an autoimmune disease? Why is it? And I'm not saying that this is the case for everybody. I'm saying that many times the answer to your question lies in one of two places. It's the external experiences that I'm having that are not working consistently over and over, these things that are happening, or I have my body's breaking down and freaking out in certain ways and nobody can figure out why. Like
Hmm.
all like I have to go get these shots regularly, cortisone to get, to numb the pain or these different types of things, or I'm having these adjustments. So what it is your body's telling you
Yeah.
something's wrong, and or your circumstances in life is telling you something's wrong, your relationships or your businesses. And so for
Or
me,
both.
that or the both, well, that's usually they're tied together. That's the
Yes,
sneaky part. That's
exactly.
part of the beauty of our work is helping people find out where their external circumstances are beginning to manifest in their physical body and their bodies speaking to them.
Hmm.
Um, but because I couldn't feel my body, it became very difficult to understand that's what was going on. And so being emotionally disconnected is difficult. However, it's very common and predominant in our culture, especially in the West. The culture of the mind is what I call it. We've got Freud out there, over 100 years ago, saying the mind is everything and the subconscious, and putting it on a pedestal and develop psychotherapy. Personally, I believe he set us back 100 years. I think that the answers are in the physical body and the
Hmm.
interaction of the mind with the physical body. That's been where my healing took place. And I didn't even realize it. So it's hard to say how to know that you're emotionally disconnected. It really reminds me of one of the peak experiences. Well, I wouldn't call it peak. It was an extreme experience with my wife shortly before this journey started. We because we had been best friends, and she was upset in this particular conversation in the kitchen. I remember where we were, and she's sitting there crying, and she didn't cry very often because we both kind of were emotionally disconnected, but me way more so. Um, and I remember her crying and being upset, and I'm just like, this is so inconvenient. That's what I was going through in my mind. I'm like, I'm so thankful that I don't have emotion because they're just inconvenient, and like, look, she's in this situation and she's sitting there crying. That, I mean, it sounds callous, but I'm trying to answer your question as best I know
That's
how.
where you were.
That's where I was. And I'm like, I'm a mind and this is how I think. And I thought I had emotions. I thought I had emotions because you have the words for it. You have happy, you have sad, you have angry, and every now and then I would feel those things, and I just thought they were weakness, things. But they were so like, I would have to get so upset for me to even have an inkling of what that would be like because I couldn't feel the affect. I couldn't feel what was going on in my body, which jumbled everything in the vagus nerve, and my mind was just going, well, I don't know what to do with this weird stuff. This doesn't make any sense
Mhm.
because that's where all my blocks had occurred, and it was just interfered with all those signals. And so she was sitting there and she was saying, what, like, she was crying. And then she said, what are you feeling? And I remember looking at her completely straight faced. And I said, I don't feel, I think.
Hmm.
And I remember saying that, not to be mean, but it was a little bit of a condescension in the sense of like, you know, why are you feeling that's kind of weak, you know? But I didn't know what she meant because I couldn't do it. And it led to lots and lots of struggles in different ways. What's interesting is that that ultimately led to, you know, shortly thereafter, having this complete reconnection exercise. And now I feel so deeply. I'll cry just talking to people because I feel what they've been through. Um, so the answer to the question is it's really hard to know when you're emotionally disconnected. My experience is that most of our culture is in different ways to
Yeah.
varying degrees. I had an extreme because I think I have a very extreme ability to feel other people, and I had to shut it down at a very young age because I couldn't control it. And it led to me living without it for so long. And then reconnecting later in life, it gives me this great compassion because guess what? That's where intuition comes from. And so
So
it was
true.
so hard as an engineer. I had to be so smart and I had to study so much to know everything because that was the only way I could have an answer. I didn't have any gut feel. I didn't have any intuition. I didn't have anything beyond me. And so my experience is that women are less disconnected as you know, predominantly than men. I do not believe there's a significant difference in men versus women as far as physically the ability to do that. I just believe it's been conditioned well out of men way more so than women.
I think you're right.
But the ability to know that you're emotionally disconnected is probably, and this is some research that I've been doing. I've been studying for 12 years, trying to understand what happened to me and how to be able to share it with other people. I believe that certain mental conditions are related to these energetic blocks and the inability of the body to get the information from the gut through the vagus nerve. 80% of the cells in our vagus nerve are designed to send information up. 20% are designed to send information down. And so many times, all of this information that our body or that our mind really requires for us to function as an organism is not making it up. And
Yeah,
so
it's true.
it's when you realize that you're lacking a gut feel or you're very indecisive, you don't have the ability to make decisions. To me, and I've never really answered this question, so it's an interesting question. To me, I think one of the most important things is if you're really indecisive and you're finding yourself stuck there a lot, it is a place of being able to say, that's probably a good indication you may be dealing with some sort of energetic block that can be blocking your emotion. And an overall, this is a harder answer. I would say an overall reduced sense of just enjoyment and well-being in life because there's not the ability to fully enjoy and to fully be happy or fully be sad. And that may be like if so as a mind trying to answer the question. So I'm trying to answer that the way I know now, but I'm trying to think about how to communicate it to me before. The inability to make decisions, nature of like what it feels like. Can you be angry? Can you be sad? Can you cry or can you not cry? Can you express anger and you know in a way that doesn't scare people around you? You know, those are going to be all tied in there. But I'd love to go and ask more questions around how to answer your question because to me it's how do we find the actual energetic blocks, but not how do we know if we're emotionally disconnected? 'Cause it's hard to see a black hole. You can only see the effects around it.
That's so true. I think sometimes what I've seen is it's behaviors. It kind of it get can be reflected in your behaviors, and that might be an easier way for people to know it, right?
Right.
So for me, like for me, the behaviors I've seen around chronic pain are things like people pleasing or perfectionism, competitiveness, also being overly polite, or even the people that are super calm. Sometimes
Right.
they're holding a lot inside, so they've learned to block, and so they're not feeling things that way. So sometimes I think the behaviors can be a little bit
Right.
of an indicator. So I don't know if you
Well, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
yeah, so because if you can't feel, how can you say, it's already not there, so you
Right.
can't feel it.
Well, and most people that are people pleasers, I was a people pleaser,
Hmm.
but I didn't know it. It's
Yeah.
just how I operated. So this is where things start to get a little bit funny. And I've written a document that talks about, you know, energetic blocks and samskaras and where you can find these and all the things that you just listed are in there and a lot of other things too. But most anybody that goes and reads that document, they're going to say, well, these are all parts of who I am. That's part of my personality. That's who I
Yeah.
am. And I've always been that way. And the
That's
answer
what we
is,
think.
that's exactly right. Like we think that's who we are because our personalities and our identities are built upon all of these energetic blocks. They're built upon samskars, they're built upon
Yeah.
the worst things that have happened to us in our lives
For
and
protection.
the best thing, but it's designed to protect us, to prevent that we don't go back into that pain. The
Yeah.
mind, the mind is very, very efficient and
Yep.
very, very powerful. And therefore, what it does is when it learns a trick and said, "Ooh, that was really bad," it creates a shortcut and said, okay, anytime this something like this happens, I'm going to make sure that I'm never going to get in that situation again. So we become unconsciously, almost reflexively, instinctually accustomed to screening out the situations and dynamics of people that remind our physical bodies or our subconscious of that situation. So the next
Mm-hmm.
thing you know, you're living a life that is only made up of everything that's left outside of that thing that you don't even realize running. So let's just say that you were walking down the road as a child and a red truck came over and almost killed the friend that you were walking with. You know, it doesn't matter what age that you were. I mean, that's designed to be a jarring exercise. But the point is that many times you'll end up in a situation where you didn't even realize it, but you've got this fear of red trucks your whole life. And you go through the world subconsciously moving yourself away from those situations. That's an extreme example, but it's exactly the nature of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really becomes interesting is when instead of it being a red truck, it becomes a overbearing authoritarian presence in your life, whether it's a parent or whether it's a teacher or whether it's a boss. That
Yeah.
takes on a whole different flavor, and then you can see the patterns that will be created within that person. Or it becomes a man or a woman, then all of a sudden then you have complete relational issues. And so these types of things are always running, and that's really the interesting part of this. Is like, how can we use our body as a guide to let us know when some of these things are off? Because as Einstein said, you can't fix, a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. And
Right.
so that's what we're trying to do is how do we look at this from a different way, and how do we see something we can't see?
Right. So let's get into that, Dan. How do you teach people to see these things they can't see?
Yeah, well, so that to me, the answer is that you can't fix it with your mind. And
Mm-hmm.
so our work is inherently somatic. And I spent a lot of my life trying to become a better and better mind, and it was just a kind of a trap. I ended up in places where I didn't think I would end up. And so the work was essentially, like I said, it was based in network chiropractic. But this is not chiropractic work. It's really more of just the frequencies of how do we get to find a safe place, because really what you said, I mean, like what we're trying to do, we're trying to avoid those things that subconsciously remind us of the situations that have hurt us in the past. So it's really just for safety. Our body's trying to do all it can to keep us safe. And
Right.
so in my world, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to find a place where you can be safe. And one of the tricks that we have found in that process is get away from other people, get away from, and I know that you can't always do this, but ideally, like when you really want to start this work, you've got to be outside of the influence of other people. When I say other people, I'm talking about their ability to see and or hear you. So because what we've done as children is we've grown up and our parents have said, don't be loud, don't cry, don't be angry, don't do all these things because that's not
Mm-hmm.
being a polite citizen, or it's not being who I need you to be. And so anytime we're being observed by other people, we have these protection mechanisms that are running, going, oh, I can't let anybody see me making that face or making sounds like this. So we've got to revert back into a quiet place. That's one of the key things. It doesn't mean that you have to do that once you know how to do it. But the point is to realize I've got to be in my own energy, and I need to be without people being able to see me, because I can't be seen as weak or broken or angry or anything that's going to make somebody else upset with me.
Or worry
Then what we
about
can
judgments at all.
Writing about judgments. That's exactly
Mm-hmm.
right. And so the point is, how can I be in my own space so that all I'm concerned about is Jane, or Daniel? Like, how can I just be in my own stuff and not worry about anybody else? And then from that place, so what we've done is we've created kind of like a place of safety for the physical body, because
Mm-hmm.
this stuff's not logical. This is not mental. This is energetic. It's the emotional body that we're dealing with, our physical bodies. So I want to create a space of safety for that doesn't feel like it's being judged by my mind. And then what we then do is we begin to take our focus and our awareness into the body. And a lot of times it depends on what are the loud things that are going on in your world. What are these larger patterns that we're seeing that may be around people pleasing, or it may be about my inability to receive, or it might be about my need to, tied to the inability to receive, is I've always got to be the giver. I've got to be the caretaker. I've got to take care of other people. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm not going to be okay.
I see that a
I'm sure
lot.
none of your audience would relate to that at all. Being that a lot of us heart-focused, centered people are trying to serve other people, not realizing that we're doing it when we really just need to care for ourselves. So
Yeah.
many times that's what happens, and it comes up in the body in different ways. And so we can rest our awareness on this concept of something that's really loud for me right now, like this, or that pattern. Or it can be that, why is it that my shoulder is frozen, or why is it that I can't seem to, my GI issues, like my stomach is always hurting right here, and no matter, I'm always constantly battling it with, I can eat this food and I can't eat that food. Well, maybe there's more going on than just the food. Maybe your body's trying to get your attention by knocking on the door saying, hey, I need some help here, can you please maybe look at this? And then us as a mind is like, no, I got crap to do. I'm not going to have time. I'm not going to slow down and stop. I'm going to take some medication or something to make you shut up so that I can get back to doing what I'm going to do. So finding some safe space, and then being able to tune in to what is it that's going on, and allow myself the space to, instead of trying to make it wrong and get away from it and push it down and push it back and take a pill or put a band-aid on it or cut it out or get rid of it, I actually go, maybe my body wants to talk to me. Maybe it wants to have some sort of communication. And that really is the essence of the work that we do. It's creating a safe space that enables the mind to lay down its judgments long enough that we can go in as that mind and project our consciousness with love and kindness into and have a conversation with the physical body. And in that physical body, we get to understand that maybe it does have emotions and it has feelings, which I know something about because I never got to have. And so this has become, I mean, really like a sacred space of being able to have a communication, to be able to have a relationship between the mind that is all I ever realized or thought I could be, into what I have now, which is like there's literally different parts of my consciousness. And there's a part that is intuitive and it's guided and it's wisdom and it's knowledge. It's tied to the right brain, but it really resides within the physical body. We get to do so many beautiful processes with people doing somatic work that helps them release these traumas, or release these judgments. They release these things that are locked in their tissues, and literally feel those things release, and emotion comes with it. Usually there's a cathartic release, and then when that
Mm.
happens, the tissues change, the structure changes. And this is why it was related to chiropractic. When you allow those emotions, those energies to be released out of the tissues, the structure changes. You'll feel vertebra pop, all kinds of things. It's so cool.
Yeah,
But look, go ahead.
I see the same thing. It's kind of like rigid thoughts, rigid behavior, you get rigidity in the body then too, right? It's all reflected. So
We do.
how like can you give someone an example of like
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you mean
So
by a somatic
I am,
practice?
but what's important is the thing that always gets in the way is people think, oh, just give me the thing to do. And so we say, hey, I want to go, and I'm going to do this thing, this, and I'll be good. Well, that's our
Yeah,
culture. Our
it
culture is
is.
epistemological in the sense of give me the things to do and I'll be good. When this is actually ontological work, it's who I'm being. Can I be a person in a mind that literally is willing to let my child throw a temper tantrum in the Walmart, parking lot and freak out? Most people in our culture are like, no, I can't do that because that's not okay. But that's what
Mm,
we're dealing with our own selves and our physical bodies. It's like our kid needs to throw a fit from time to time, and sometimes that pain, that indigestion, that GI issue, or that frozen shoulder, like that is the body trying to throw a temper tantrum, and the mind won't let it. So
mm,
we have to create this space of safety outside of other people's presence. And we have to be able to be willing to go in like with a parent. It's almost like that child is throwing a fit, or instead it was riding his bike and then he fell down and scratched up his knee, and he's sitting on the ground and he's just crying, and he's, say 3 years old or whatever, 3 or 4 years old, tricycle, whatever it is, fell down and scraped up the knee, and they're crying and it's dirty, and you were the adult. you're the parent and you see this child there and he's just crying on the ground and scraping and holding his knee. And what do you do? What do you do as a parent? You're not going to go over there and say, well, that was stupid. Why did you ride that across there? And then couldn't you see this was going to happen? Get up, clean this off. But honestly, Jane, my own personal experience with myself and all, I mean, and I'm talking about high-end business owners that I do this work with and anybody else too. It's not, it, we're all human beings. But guess what? That energy, that way in which I was describing treating that child, that's how we treat our physical bodies. That's how we
Mm-hmm.
treat ourselves.
Love that. Mm-hmm.
And so the magic of what it is that we're doing is we're bringing in compassion and love. You would never do that with that child, especially if it was your child. So instead, what if we just hold our own physical bodies and the things that it's doing that we don't like, that we're judging as wrong, and say, the body is very, very, very wise. It knows what it needs. If it's upset, if it's giving us symptoms or pain, there's a reason. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have a headache because my body says I'm low on Advil. I have a headache because I probably need more liquids, more water and or more oxygen. 90% of the time, you won't have a headache if you take care of those two things. So if we can go hold that child, if we can literally step into that place and just pick that child up and just say, oh, and just hold them and just love on them and let them cry without trying to make them stop or say that that's not appropriate right now, the child will, they'll sob and they'll sob and they'll sob, and then they'll take a deep breath. They go, while you're holding that child. And then guess what? Then they'll get up and they'll run off and they'll go play and they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
My personal experiences, all of this work and these energetic blocks come through a lack of expression of emotion. And when we instead have something outside of us, that judgment, that thought, those people around us, and then we modify our behaviors and how I would move that emotion for their benefit because they've told me they need that, that's when everything gets backwards. In the emotion, instead of going out and moving out energy and motion, goes in, it locks in tissues. And so with our work, we literally are going into the body and getting to explore and find where that emotion was locked in and went the wrong way in the past. Magically, then through these processes of going in and what I'll tell you how to do here in just a second is like allowing that emotion to come back out. And when that emotion does come back out, the healing takes place. Bless you. When that emotion comes out, the healing does take place. And so, but what's most important is that we get this frequency of what it's like to actually allow our bodies to do what it does without trying to change it. Because if you don't do that, if you're trying to go into this saying, well, my neck hurts, and so I'm going to do this process so my neck doesn't hurt, that's not going to work. It's like the body knows. It's like, you're just trying to trick me. No. So then if we can create that frequency of safety and the willingness to go into the body, then what we want to do is find where it is that whatever's bothering us, and tune into the experience of what it's like. And then what we want to do is we just want to breathe into it, like breathe in through our nose and then out through our mouth. And like almost use our hands like as an indicator of a spotlight of our consciousness into the place where we're experiencing those symptoms. And then what we do is we just really begin to feel into it. And as we continue to breathe in through our nose and out through our mouths, with a sense of almost like talking to our body, like holding that child that I was telling you about,
Mm-hmm.
when we
Mm-hmm.
can do that, something magical begins to happen and your body begins to downregulate, the nervous system begins to downregulate. And then what ends up happening is if we're willing, then what we want to do is on our breath out, we want to just start making a little bit of sound, a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
vibration. And then a lot of times what we'll find is our body naturally knows the kind of vibration it wants to make. And a lot of times that vibration and that sound just happen to be the sounds that nobody in our culture likes to hear. And so we have all these rules and roles and responsibilities that we absorb over time because like, oh, I don't like the sound of that. That doesn't sound very appropriate or professional or whatever it is. And so many times when we're making these sounds, and this is why you've got to be outside of anybody else's presence, when you start making those sounds, the body's like, are you really going to let me make some sounds? Are you really going to honor me and let me speak? That's when the magic starts happening. And some really
Mm.
beautiful things can happen. So it's really just that simple, but it's the essence of what we're talking about that's way more important than the doing of the process. When you can hold that level of safety and love and compassion for the body as a child, And then you can begin to breathe in and make the motions, a little bit of movement into the tissues, and then that vibration. Amazing things start to happen. And that's the essence of what it is that we're talking about. So
Sometimes I think about this before there was language. What were the thoughts and the sounds that came out would have just been those sounds that we need to just express and let out, right? Not being concerned with words and whether we're fitting in culturally, that kind of stuff. So I think sometimes language is great, but maybe it doesn't always serve us really well. So sometimes we just need to let go of it a little bit and just make those
yeah.
the sounds that just want to come out.
Yeah. Well, and that's honestly like with me being, very, very scientific and emotionally disconnected, but very smart and very successful. And then also being down here and born in the buckle of the Bible Belt and doing all the things the right way, the way I was supposed to. I was very, very restricted and I won the game. I should have been happy. I was miserable. And so now
Mm.
having this access to emotion and energetic work and these different things that most people in my old cultures wouldn't believe, I wouldn't have believed. My passion is really how do I bridge this gap? How do I tie together our culture that's been so disconnected and westernized? How do I tie it into some of these more holistic concepts? And that's really what it's about. It's about getting into the science and the backgrounds of the different things that make sense out of this conversation that you and I have had here. Because this
Hmm.
is not a scientific do this, do this, do this conversation. It is a frequency of like an energy of safety. It's an energy of acceptance and an energy of love. And as you well aware, doing what you're doing, this is like a core concept in all healing. If you don't have these things, people are not going to heal. They're just going to keep going in circles. That's
Yeah.
why this type of work is ideal for people that are like, I've tried everything. I
Hmm.
don't understand why I'm not getting better. Well, it's probably because you're judging what your body is doing as opposed to
Hmm.
moving towards what it's doing.
And another thing I know you and I share this concept is that even sometimes we will still get people coming to the, they're interested in natural and all that, but they still think, I'm going to work with you because you're going to fix me.
Fix
You're
me.
going to give me tell me the 5 things I got to do. And we are still really structured around that. And it's hard sometimes to get across the concept. It's not the doing, it's the being. I
That's right.
teach you a new way to be, and I can't be for you. You have to be.
That's
You have to
exactly
do
right.
the being, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that's beautiful about that is that you are empowered then,
Right.
because that whole seeking someone else to heal me is disempowering and
That's right.
and ultimately doesn't work really anyway.
Well,
Um,
that's correct. Well, and but for compassion's sake, that person that is saying, give me those things to do, that's because that's what they were told to do as a child. I'm not
oh,
going to say it
exactly.
always goes back to children, but these
Yeah.
core concepts really are because that's where our winning strategies were created. Well, you need to know the right things to do, which means in order for me to have connection and love and happiness and to be protected and to feel safe, I need to do the right things. So that becomes so deeply innately wired that that's the only way we know. And so
It
that's why
is. Yeah.
why I love this work, Jane, is because I did everything I knew to do and I studied everything and I was exhausted because I had to learn so much to feel equipped to make right decisions. This work has given me the freedom to go, I don't need to know these things. All of the wisdom I need is actually out here and available. All I have to do is be able to trust myself to be able to
Mhm.
have some intuitive guidance that all of a sudden, I don't know why, but this feels like the right decision. And when you can embody that, it gets you out of that process of making, of giving those structures. So what you just
Mm.
described with that person goes back to what you originally said. How do I know if I'm emotionally disconnected? More times than not, that giving me the right thing to do, a structural way in which to approach this problem is pointing to your question that you asked before, like, how do you know you're emotionally disconnected? If you are obsessed with the sequence of steps, and I'm not saying this is always because some people have a gift around that, but if you're obsessed with the sequence of steps and you feel like if you don't get those steps right, that you're not going to be able to solve the problem, this may be an outlet for you to be able to go into the somatic work, the experiences of the body, the wisdom
Mhm.
of the body, because it knows what to do. The mind oftentimes does not. All the mind
Mhm.
knows how to do is reinforce the patterns that it thinks are keeping it safe.
Yeah,
And
which are
usually that's not the case.
yeah, and they don't usually serve a healthy body either. So,
Right.
especially if we're staying in stress. So, Can we tie this together? So I usually ask, what's one thing someone can do today that's going to begin to initiate the healing in their body? So
Yeah,
what can you tie that into a step or one thing? Sorry, not
absolutely.
a
I mean,
step,
so
but
let's
one
let's
thing.
let's let's understanding the concepts and the feel of what we've discussed. We're accessing compassion for a
Yes.
physical body. So I think of anything that I would say to do, my world now is defined by a relationship of my mind as a consciousness and my physical body as a consciousness as well. So if I can simply do that and say, hey, I am willing to have a conversation with my physical body, even though sometimes it's like a little cranky child, it's got emotions and sometimes it's not happy and sometimes it's really not happy. Can I allow it to do that? And can I have a conversation from that place? If I can access that place and then I can hold in mind that picture that I gave you of the parent holding the child and comforting the child with love as opposed to trying to reprimand and teach them when they're hurting. If I can do those two things, then just go in, and when I say, okay, well, right now I've got, I'm feeling really anxious. I've got a meeting, or I feel like I'm really upset with my spouse, or I feel like my kids are they're not doing what. Kind of step back, close your eyes, and then just kind of breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and just kind of ground yourself a little bit. And then just notice in your physical body, like, where do I feel that? Where do I feel that? And don't get bent out of shape about it. If you don't know where it is, maybe you say, a lot of people are like, oh, it's in my mind, it's in my head. Usually it's not in your head. That's your head trying to make sense out of what's coming up or not coming up from the body. So attempt to find where it's located in the torso, somewhere between the neck and the hips, and just say, okay, in this particular case, and make a little bit of sound and just notice, oh, it seems to be like right here, like right in my solar plexus. That's where I feel this burning or this tightness or this center. And sometimes it's really big. So just pick the center point. Find a single place that you can take your hands and put them on. And then breathe in through that place, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And just see if you can actually connect your consciousness as a mind through your hands to the physical body. And it's almost like holding that child that after they skinned up their knee, and just see if you can share grace and love and compassion with that place. And then this is when we find that spot, we just breathe in through our nose and out through our mouths multiple times slowly. A lot of times, if these are very symptomatic places and we've had a relationship with them for a long time of judgment, we're not even going to be able to move it. It may be like really tight tissues. There's not going to be a lot of structural movement. But as we're doing this breathing, we want to breathe in through our nose, out through our mouths, and see if we can flex our back or flex our body just a little bit to get a little bit of movement into that place. And then as we're breathing out, we just make some sounds. Like this is where a lot of times in our culture, people have the hardest time with this.
I'm
Just,
even having a hard time knowing that
yeah,
this is
well,
recorded,
right. Well,
and all that.
being recorded. Well, you've got not just my consciousness looking at you, which I actually have a gift to help people feel safe, so it makes it easier. But when you're having observers, you're
Mm,
like, well, I can't make that sound because that doesn't sound right. That's the whole
like a,
point. So when you can
ugh.
create that space, yeah, and it's just notice when you do that, just notice how much better your body feels. Your body's like, wow, thank you. I mean, it's literally that simple to be able to give our body permission to do the things that we haven't.
Mm-hmm. So
So
good.
this exercise, literally, that's all you got to do is just find a place and be willing to have that conversation. Use our fingers as a spotlight of consciousness to say, hey, this thing that's always controlled you and told you what to do is coming to you, physical body, as a request. Can we have a conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to speak? The only way it has to be able to speak is through its voice and through the sounds and the vibrations that it can make. The problem is that our mind has the ability to overrule it, and that's where all the funkiness starts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love the way you talk about using the fingers or the hands as points of consciousness. It's really interesting to think of it that way, like a spotlight of consciousness.
Yeah,
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 which really can give people like a tangible way to say, here's how to like connect this with your body, right?
right, right.
So that
Which is
was
very different than taking a pill or cutting things out or numbing with alcohol or whatever it is. It's
so
it's
true.
the inverse.
So right. Dan, this has really been wonderful. Where can people find out more about you? Where is the best place for people to
Well, that's
find you?
amazing. Yeah, I mean, this is new stuff, and so we're really excited to be able to share this. It's the process is called integral methodology. It's how we creating integrity, energetic integrity of our whole system, of our mind and our consciousness and our body. So it's integral methodology, and a lot of it is aimed at business owners because these samskaras and these energetic blocks are dictating the profit margins of our businesses if we own our businesses. And so that's really my primary focus. But what's unique about this work is these samskaras, these energetic blocks, they're causing physical issues within the physical body.
Hmm.
So there's also a huge healing application to it. And so we're in the process of creating some branding around this is the part that's around healing the physical body and work. And then the integral methodology is really more around business. But for now, going to integralmethodology.com, and that'll link to what it is that we're doing and what we're creating.
And we'll have the link there in the show notes as well if people want to find. It's funny when you say integral. I'm like, okay, this is not the calculus integrals that you and
That's
I
right. It's
studied
not
so much.
calculus. But you understand as an engineer, you're like, I see why he uses that word. And other people are like, it sounds very like mental and engineering. I'm like, well, I know. So we're in the process of branding. So yeah, but the essence of this is anything but mental and anything but engineer, which is
Right.
why I love this conversation with you. It's really fun to be able to be seen by somebody that can understand this spectrum, right?
Well, this has been a really fun conversation, Dan. I've really enjoyed it. I know that the audience has gotten a lot out of it too, just to try the little spotlights with your fingers,
Yeah, yeah.
and really start feeling into your body. So, Dan, thank you so much for being a guest here today on Wellness by Design. I'm so thankful I met you, and I love the work that you're doing. So, thank you for being here and being the person that you are now and sharing these gifts with the world.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your invitation. It's been wonderful. I can't wait to share more. So
All right, and thanks so much for the people watching and listening today. And if you were listening, maybe you want to go to YouTube to watch it, or if you were watching on YouTube and you want to listen on the run to this again, you can pop it into on your device wherever you listen to podcasts. So, and share this with someone too who you think might need to get in touch with their body again. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.
thank you.